going to show you how to make the stacked pumpkins from Kreative Kiwi, and for that I'm going to be using my 4x4 hoop, wash away stabiliser, matching bobbin and thread, masking tape, my squizzers, and I've got my batting and fabrics cut to size. I've also got a little piece of ribbon so that I can add a loop to hang it. You're going to start off by hooping your wash away stabiliser. And I like to use a couple of pins around the edge just to secure it so that it doesn't pull down through. You're now going to load your file into your machine. You're going to start with either file A, B or C depending on how many pumpkins you're going to stack. A being the largest, going down through the alphabet. When you've loaded that, you're going to pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round to number 1, and that's going to give you your batting placement outline. Next you're going to add your batting, so place your batting over the outline and tape it in place so that it can't move during stitching. Pop your hoop back into your machine and stitch round number 2 to secure it. Trim away the excess batting from around the edge of the stitch line. You're now going to place your first fabric over the batting and then tape it in place. Pop that into your machine and stitch round number 3 to secure it. Next are the facial features. If you want to stitch these, load whatever colour you want of thread into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 4. If you don't want to do them, then you can skip this colour. Turn your hoop over, because now you're going to add the back. Place your fabric over the outline and tape it in place. Pop your hoop back into your machine and stitch round number 5. You're now going to trim away the excess fabric from both back and front. So turn your hoop over and then trim it away close to the stitch line. If you haven't done so already, load a matching bobbin and thread into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 6, and that's going to do all the satin stitch detail. You can now free your pumpkin from the hoop, so turn your hoop over. And that's the first of your stack completed. Load the next letter sequence into your machine. Hoop 2 layers of wash away stabiliser and pin around the edge. Then pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 1 to give you your placement outline. Place your batting over the outline and then tape it in place. Pop your hoop back into your machine and stitch round number 2 to secure it. Trim away the excess batting from around the edge of the stitch line. You're now going to place your fabric over the batting and then tape it in place. Pop that into your machine and stitch round number 3 to secure it. Next is the facial features, so load whatever colour you want for those into your machine, and then stitch round to number 4. Turn your hoop over and place your backing fabric over the back of the hoop and tape it in place. Pop your hoop back into your machine and stitch round number 5 to secure it. Remove the tape from your hoop and then turn your work over, and you're now going to trim up the excess fabric from both the front and the back. You're now going to put that back into your machine and stitch round number 6, and that's going to do the zigzagging down this side, and it's going to stop where we've got to join the previous piece to this one. We're now going to join the first piece to the second, but before we do that we need to trim up along the top of the first piece where the join's going to be, and we want to trim as close as possible to the stitch line. Okay, so where the zigzagging stops, we're going to add these 2 pieces, and this stitch line here should sit on top of this stitch line here. And when you're happy with the positioning of it, then you can pin it. Make sure you keep your pins right out of the way of the stitch line though. Now I'm going to add a little bit of tape just to hold this piece in place. When you're happy, pop that into your machine and stitch round number 7, and that's going to zigzag along the join here, and it will stop here. Before you go any further, just check your work to make sure that the join is nice and neat, and if you're happy with that, then you can carry on. Pop this back into your machine and with matching bobbin and thread stitch round number 8. If you're not very good at joining, or you really struggle, what you can do is stitch round number 7 so that it gives you your zigzagging, then place this over the top, and you can see exactly where your first piece is going to be in relation to the zigzag stitching, and until you get the hang of it, sometimes that's an easier way of joining things. We're now going to free these from the hoop, so turn your hoop over and taking care not to cut your first piece underneath, trim around the edge. Don't worry about any excess stabiliser, we're going to dissolve that afterwards with some warm water. We're now going to trim up around this edge here so that when we come to do the join it's all ready. And that's our second piece completed. Load your next file in the alphabetical sequence into your machine, then hoop your 2 layers of wash away stabiliser and pin around the edge of your hoop. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 1 for your placement line for your batting. Place your batting over the outline and tape it in place. Pop your hoop back into your machine and stitch round number 2 to secure it. Trim away all the excess batting from around the stitch line. Place your fabric over the outline and tape it in place. Pop your hook back into your machine and stitch round number 3 to secure it. Next are the facial features, so load whatever colour you want for the eyes, nose and mouth into your machine and then stitch round number 4. You're now going to add your backing, so turn your hoop over and place your fabric over the outline and then tape it in place. Pop your hoop back into your machine and stitch round number 5 to secure it. You're now going to trim up the excess fabric from both back and front. You're going to pop your hoop back into your machine and stitch round number 6, and that's going to do the zigzagging down this side until it gets to the joint, then it will stop. We're now going to do the join of the previous pieces onto this one. If you're not very good at joining or you find it difficult, stitch round number 7 to give you your zigzag line. Then you're going to reset your machine to stitch round number 7 again after you've placed your other 2 pieces onto the 3rd. So line these up with this stitch line over the top of this stitch line and pin it in place. Of course, keeping all pins out of the way of the stitch line. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of tape just to hold the edges down each side. When you're satisfied, you can then pop your hoop back into your machine and stitch round number 7 or round number 7 again, depending on how you're doing this. Once again, check your join, and if you're happy with it, then you can go on and stitch round number 8, which is a satin stitching. If you're not, unpick the zigzagging, reposition it and stitch round number 7 again. We can now remove this from the hoop. Load file D into your machine, hoop your 2 layers of washaway stabiliser and pin around the edge, pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 1 to give you your placement outline for the batting. Place your batting over the outline and tape it in place. Pop your hoop back into your machine and stitch round number 2 to secure it. Trim up your excess batting. If you're going to add a hanging loop, you can do so now. As long as you put it on before the backing fabric, it doesn't really matter whereabouts you put it, and you can put it either back or front. Just overlap the ribbon so that it overlaps this stitch line here, and then tape it in place. And like I say, you could do it on the back if you wanted to, it really doesn't matter. Once you're happy, then you're going to place your fabric over the outline, tape it in place, pop your hook back into your machine and stitch round number 3, and that's going to secure it. Next is the facial features, so place whatever thread you want into your machine for those and then stitch round number 4. Turn your hoop over, place your backing fabric over the outline of the pumpkin and tape it in place. Pop your hoop back into your machine and stitch round number 5 to secure it. Remove all the tape, turn your hoop over and trim up the excess fabric from both back and front. Take care not to cut your ribbon though if you've put one on. You're now going to pop your hoop back into your machine and stitch round number 6, and that's going to do the zigzagging down here, ready to do the join. Take your previous pieces and once again, after having trimmed up nice and close to the stitch line here, overlap this stitch line onto this stitch line here, and then pin it in place. Keep your pin right out of the way of the stitch line. Then tape the edges down. If you're happy with your line up there, you can pop that into your machine and stitch round number 7. Once again, if you're not very good at joining up, you can stitch round number 7 first, then go back, put your previous piece over the top of here, and then stitch round number 7 again. If you're happy with your join, you can now stitch round number 8, and that's going to do the zigzagging up to the stalk here. Load your matching bobbin and thread for the stalk into your machine and then stitch round number 9. Swap over your matching bobbin and thread for the colour that you want for around the pumpkin, and then you're going to stitch the last round of stitching, which is round number 10. You're going to free your stack from the hoop. Take care not to cut your ribbon off if you've got one. We're now going to remove the excess stabiliser with some warm water. So I've got my water here and a cotton bud. Just dip it in and run it around the edge of the stitch line. And that's our stacked pumpkins finished. I hope you enjoyed this stitch along. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to be notified of new videos as they're published. Do pop along to Kreative Kiwi's Facebook group. There's lots of ideas, help and inspiration there for everybody. And thank you very much for joining me.